Tonight's author is an avid writer and dedicated college lecturer. Through his novels, The City of Dry Bones, published in 2021, Between Lions and Lambs in 2011, and now Never Hide from the Devil, N.T McQueen has brought unique perspectives on human nature to readers, and you'll see in this book. In addition to his novels, his writing has been featured in North American Review, Stone Coast Review, Entropy, Sunlight Press, Atticus Review, Dappled Things, Grief Digest Magazine, and Forward Magazine. And he and his wife Christina just moved back to California from Hawaii, from our other paradise. So we're very pleased to welcome N.T McQueen.
Thank you.
This, I know you're going to do a book talk here, but there's a few things. The Armenian genocide. It's really hard to imagine, if you're not familiar with the history, the extent that a people was almost completely wiped out. At the time in 1915, there were 2 million Armenians. By the end of the genocide, there were only 500,000 remaining. First, the Ottoman Empire, which turned into Turkey. And it's just, in that decade period, it was just so unimaginable. And I'm just wondering, I have one question to you before I turn over the talk to you.
Sure.
You know, how much did that part weigh on you? You know, the change of history, the loss of near loss of the civilization. And how much of that influenced you to write this book?
Well, yeah, so one of the main things that inspired me to write this was the fact that I was like in my mid-30s, and that's the first time I ever heard about the Armenian genocide. And when I found out about it from our Armenian friends that we had, I was kind of a little bit in shell shock, a bit, to use a World War I term. I was a little bit of shell shock because I'm like, how did this never come up at all in, you know, all my years of education, and even in college didn't hear about it. And I was quite baffled that happened. And as I get to know it, there are some political reasons why we don't talk about it, why presidents won't acknowledge it, things like that. But one of the main things that, and the reason that affected me so much, is because it was such an important part of history.
Yeah.
Because Hitler used it as a blueprint to do what he did to the Jews. And he's even on record as saying that. And there's many Armenian books that you can read, and they use that quote at the beginning. Forgotten Fire by Adam Bagdasarian. Nadine Tagforian's new graphic novel, Armaveni, she used that quote there as well. And you see it all the time. And when you see like how integral it was in kind of this domino effect to create what happened in World War II, which we're not shy about talking about, it was something that I was kind of deeply disturbed by, in a way, to not have that discussed or acknowledged or talked about in any capacity. So as I learned about it, I knew I wanted to write about it, and but I just didn't have a story yet, because I didn't want to just regurgitate what the current literature about the genocide, or especially like novels about the genocide, were. I didn't want it to just kind of be this, you know, kind of just a story of survival and suffering, and then, you know, making it out. So that's usually what a lot of the novels were, you know, followed that format, and also were based off of real life stories. So they're almost autobiographical. So yeah, so I felt we need to contribute more to this, you know, contribute more to getting it out there, getting these, you know, in this case, I think a very inspiring story out there, and to hopefully get younger generations to acknowledge it, talk about it, and ask, why aren't we talking about this? Why aren't we discussing this in our classrooms? Because I'm a teacher, I make sure they learn about it. They read something about it, and I always get the same thing. I didn't even know this happened, you know, and how could something of this magnitude just get ignored? And
well, it's going to be up to the artist to get the word out, so to speak, and through political channels. It doesn't seem to be working. But so it's going to be up here, and I thank you for sharing. And why don't you talk to the audience about your book?
Great.
Okay.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. It's great to see some new faces. Usually there's a lot of my family sprinkled in there, so it's nice to see new faces. My novel is Never Hide from the Devil, and it's based on the defense of Vaughan that happened early on in the Armenian genocide. Anybody here familiar with the defense of Vaughan? Or heard of it before? I know you have. And you've heard of it too? Yeah. So that, I guess before I talk about kind of the inspiration and how I found out about that and why I wanted to write about it, Michael kind of gave a little bit of a history, some context of the Armenian genocide. I'm just curious, how many of you have heard of the Armenian genocide prior? This is new for you then?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And how old are you?
74.
74. See? Exactly. That's the thing I'm talking about. I was in my 30s, and it only happened because I became friends with an Armenian family through our church and talked with them about it, and they kind of opened my eyes to this hidden part of history that was pretty monumental that we just didn't want to talk about, for whatever reasons. So most everybody here has heard of the Armenian genocide, but kind of a quick recap. This happened during World War I, and because of the new government that had come in, there was always some kind of like dislike or hatred towards non-Turkish citizens during that time in the Ottoman Empire. And so it was kind of culminating and building up to this point. World War I served as a good distraction for the current Turkish government to kind of answer what they call the Armenian question. That may sound familiar to you, right? Mm-hmm. And that involved what they claim is to just basically kick them out of the Ottoman Empire, and so it would be a completely Turkish country. They wanted to kick out Greeks and Assyrians and Kurds and other groups that were there too. But the Armenians, they really, not only did they want them out, but they pretty much massacred them, starting in small villages and then working their way into the bigger cities and things like that. And that happened early, I think maybe April 1915. That's when it started happening, and went through the war. And so, my book doesn't get into the gory details so much, but there's plenty of literature out there that you can read that will tell you about just how brutal it really was, and how a lot of them died in the desert, died on the way to relocation camps, and that's why you have so many Armenians all over the world now. Down in Glendale, largest population outside of Armenia of Armenians, and Sacramento has a pretty good sized population, and Massachusetts, places like that. But the reason that is because of the Armenian genocide. And so that's just a little kind of backstory to understand what's going on, because I've had other events where people are, my book isn't necessarily a textbook, so it's not necessarily giving you all the information that you need. So I have a further reading. So if you do buy the book and you're interested, I've got a starting place for you of some fiction and nonfiction that you can check out to gain a little bit more information about it. And I don't think there's also some movies that you can watch too, like The Promise is one, and Ararat, and other books or movies. So that's a little backstory there. And so, like I said, I had these Armenian friends. They taught me about the Armenian genocide, and that was kind of a little germ, right? A little seed that was planted into my brain. And I thought, I really would like to write a book about this. I just don't know what, right? Don't want to just contribute to it. And so I found this story many years later. I think we were living in Hawaii at the time, so it had been a long time since I first heard about the genocide. And I'm always reading up some historical thing. And so I'm looking at some page, and I see literally a sentence at the end of this article, and it says the defense of Vaughan. And I thought, what is that? And so I go to the, I go and Google Defense of Vaughn, was able to find kind of an extensive article and found this very cool story. And the gist of the historical event is that early on in the genocide, and pretty early on in World War I as well, there was a city in the eastern part of the Ottoman Empire called Van, which is right next to Lake Van, which is a really big lake in that part of Turkey. And there's little cities all around it and villages and stuff like that. But at that time, Van was the largest city. Well, early on in this, with the genocide, they kind of got wise to some of the rumors they were hearing about massacres happening and all of their rights being taken away by Turkish soldiers, their property being taken away. They weren't allowed to have weapons, but that didn't stop them. So they're part of the Armenian revolutionary group, started stockpiling weapons and hiding them. And then when Jevdet Bey, who's called the horseshoe or bashkale, because he would actually horseshoe or hit horseshoes into the feet of Armenians that he was torturing or getting information from. And he was bringing his army towards the city of Van. But the Van citizens, they had stockpiled all these weapons, and they said, we're not going to let them kill us. We're not going to let them take our land. We're not going to take our homes. And we're going to go down swinging, is basically what they decided to do. And so even though the Turkish army had come to the outer gates, men, women, grandma, grandpa, children, they all played a part in defending the city for about 2 months, until they got some reinforcements from the Russian army that was advancing, and the Turkish group fled. And with minimal casualties too. There was not many Armenians that actually had died in the fighting. And so when I found that, I realized that's the story I want to write. No one's ever heard of this unless you're Armenian, right? And not only is it a unique story of resistance during World War I, it's an amazing story of human resilience, regardless of whether you're Armenian or, Santa Barbaran. It doesn't matter. It's just a unique story that I found very inspiring to stand up against a great evil that was happening, and how everybody from grandmas and grandpas all the way down to I think as young as 9 years old played a part in fighting. And so that's when I was like, all right, I found my setting. Now I got to dive in, and that's where I jumped in and did about a year of research. And I really scoured the internet. I luckily found a book called Vaughn 1915. It was a nonfiction book written shortly after the events that happened. That was a lifesaver. It literally walked me through the entire event. And that's in the further reading as well. So it's definitely something to check out. And so I got a lot of books, got a lot of research done, and I thought that was great. But I still knew that what I needed to talk to Armenians. It's their history, and I don't want to screw it up, and I don't want to sensationalize it or stereotype anything. I want to do it the right way, And there's always the question of, would Armenians want me to tell this story? I'm an Odar, I'm a foreigner, non-Armenian. So, would they want me telling this story? So that's when I started reaching out to different Armenian authors, Armenian scholars, and and basically I think I had Zoom meetings with some Armenian scholars from Columbia University, Dr. Ronald Suni, who's kind of like one of the OG Armenian scholars. I had a Zoom meeting with him, and he was very excited. I was writing a novel about it, and some other Armenian authors that I've actually been able to do events with. They helped me with things like Western Armenian, which I was using Google Translate, and it was failing me because it was the Eastern Armenian. And so they're like, well, they would have spoke Western Armenian, so you got to change some of these things. And so that was very helpful. So all of them were invaluable. And what was even more encouraging is they all gave me kind of the green light and the stamp of approval to write this novel. And so that made me feel a lot better because, so that they kind of trusted me. But that was still very terrifying because I had to write the thing. And so over about, I think 9 or 10 months, I wrote a first draft. I had my wife as a beta reader, my 2 oldest daughters, who were kind of the age group I was writing for. They were beta readers, and they got to tell Dad, if it worked or not. They didn't like this. You need to change that. And actually, my niece read it. She read it too. It was also kind of helpful. So they liked it and said thumbs up. But then I had to send it out to the Armenians that I'd been talking to, and I had to put my money where my mouth was and see if it worked. And so that's the most nervous I've ever been sending out a manuscript to people to read, because it was I just didn't. I guess I wasn't confident enough in myself to know if I had done the job right. So I sent it out, and then they all loved it. They were very grateful that I told this story. They enjoyed the novel too, not just because it was an Armenian story, but because it entertained them, So, and also kind of reflected a part of their history that's been suppressed and ignored over the years. So that was kind of the journey of writing it, and then a small press finally picked it up, and it's now out in the world, and here it is. So
Congratulations.
I like their cover too. I think they did a good job on the cover.
Can you talk about the type?
The title?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
What you did that?
yeah, so I had a few working titles on this one, and again, I passed it by my beta readers, my daughters, and my wife too, and I said like, oh, here's like 4 titles. Which one do you like the most? And they liked Never Hide from the Devil, and I like that one too, because kind of a metalhead. And it's actually taken from a song by System of a Down. They have a song called Genocidal Humanoids that they wrote during the Artsakh crisis. It was kind of like a protest song. And that was one of the lines from that song. And I thought, well, an Armenian metal band, and I can use some of that in the title for an Armenian historical novel. I thought, hey, that works out pretty good. So if you see any System of a Down guys, make sure that you say, hey, there's a book about this.
Yes.
Do you want to post it on your Instagram? That would be great. You hear that, Serge? Yeah. All right, so so that's how the title came about. And within the novel itself, Never Hide from the Devil kind of takes on a couple metaphorical meanings, throughout the
They
novel
really
as
fought.
well.
They didn't hide from the people that wanted to kill them. They really fought.
Yeah, there's a literal meaning to it, and then more of a kind of symbolic, universal theme meaning that can be behind it, and that's usually for the reader to line out and decipher for themselves when they read it. But yeah, so just a little bit about the book, and then I thought I'd read the first chapter just to get an idea of what the story is like. But so the novel, I wrote it designed for a young adult audience. So I was hoping, my goal was to have it potentially be in schools as curriculum. It could be part of a language arts unit or social studies unit, just to kind of hopefully get some traction in getting the history, global history out there, instead of just only Armenians bringing it up all the time. It should be something we're all discussing and learning from. So I wrote it in first person present tense from a 14-year-old Armenian boy in Bonn named Suren Simonian. And basically it's his experience of the defense of Bonn and how it unfolds. And you hopefully, as you're reading it, you're experiencing his confusion, his ideas of what he should be doing, his kind of struggle with his family, of what they want. They don't want him to go out and fight. They want to keep him safe. But he's 14, he's a man, he wants to go and join the Fidai, the soldiers, and go fight. And so a lot of it has to do with that as the defensive bond is unfolding. And he has this group of friends that he kind of joins with, and they sneak out, and they try to, eavesdrop on the secret meetings they're not supposed to be eavesdropping on, and so they're kind of being teenagers in a way. But also, one of the key elements in this book is Surin's best friend is Turkish. It's a Turkish boy named Hamza. And they're best friends, but then as this division between their two people groups happens, they are trying to navigate that friendship while, trying to defend the city and do all these things. And so there's kind of and as you read the novel, you'll see there's kind of a really strong friendship and bond that happens between those two characters. I'm not going to tell you. Yeah, so that's kind of the gist of it. There's a lot of different a lot of different characters. There is a character in here named Aram Manoukian, who was a real historical figure. He helped during the defense of Vaughan. He was kind of one of the remaining political leaders at the time. And when the Armenians in Vaughan actually relocated to Armenia, and they tried to start like the Armenian Republic, he was one of the first leaders of the Armenian, like an independent Armenian region. Unfortunately, he got some disease, I don't remember what it was, typhoid or something, and he passed away relatively young. But you'll see him in here, and he's a real historical figure. And Jevdet Bey, the horseshoer of the Bashkale, he's a real guy. You never really meet him, but he's kind of this looming presence in the novel. And he was a real piece of work. He was a real person and a real piece of work. So, and everything within the novel, draws from real life experiences of what people did, and how they resisted, how they defended the city and stuff like that. So I'll read the first chapter, and then I'll open it up for any questions that anybody has, and go from there. How we doing? We're doing good on time?
Good. Good.
So one thing I did is I purposely wrote this so that it has very fast, short chapters. That's why there's like 66 chapters and stuff like that. Because one, I think teenagers are probably going to feel better about themselves if they're kind of flying through this. And I'm sure we all can be honest. We feel pretty good when we're doing it too, right? As older folk, I know I feel that way. That's why I read a lot of Kurt Vonnegut in college, because I'm like, I'm blowing through this thing, a lot of white space. But yeah, and they did a good job. They've got like these cool little flames. All right, so the first chapter is a fight on holy ground. I'm doing my best with Armenian pronunciations, so I may mess it up, but I'm doing my best. All right. The group of boys waits behind St. Bogos, hoping Father Zakarian doesn't come out. I always find it odd they choose to fight behind a holy building. The Bible teaches us to love our enemies, not punch them in the face. I can see the Topshu Mosque a few streets down, rising into the sky, and wonder if the Quran teaches to love our enemies as well. Two boys pace in the center, Rosmik, who looks like a man ready to join the army, with a scar under his right eye to prove it, and a new boy who attends the orphanage school run by the Americans. The two dance around the circle in a cloud of dust as the others urge them to fight. The shadow of the steeple cuts through the heart of the circle. The slight crispness in the spring air makes me glad I brought my coat. Rosmik's dark eyes bore into the new boy. He keeps his fists raised and loaded like a wolf, waiting to attack while the new boy shuffles. His eyes dart from face to face, and with each pass of the circle, he steps on his own crumpled troths in the dirt. What's his name? I asked Nishan. I can hear Nishan wheezing through his nose. Mardik? Miktar? I'm not sure. It doesn't matter what his name is. Rosmik is an animal, Hamza comments, his fist lifted and punching through the air. Why are they fighting anyway? I ask. You know Rosmik. He's always looking to hit someone, Nishan replies, removing his glasses and wiping them with his shirt. His clothes hang so loosely on him that it looks like his mother gave him a blanket to wear to school. Nishan didn't go to Uramian school. His blood would have been on Rosmik's fist by now. The voices grow louder as the two keep circling without a swing. One of the boys with wide-set eyes from Hasuchian school yells, "Fight!" in Armenian. Soon the word catches fire. Each boy punches the air as he chants. Even Hamza, who only knows a few phrases in our language, joins in. "Mikron, that's his name," Nishan shouts, pointing his finger in the air like a politician. Rosmik and Mikron circle faster, kicking up dust from the street. The cloud builds and a sick, tense feeling surges in my gut, a feeling I hate, but I wait and watch like the others. With a growl, Rosmik lunges toward his opponent and swings. A roar fills the air. Mikron ducks and Rosmik's fist swings across the top of his head. The momentum sends him staggering and he turns, glaring at Mikron. His eyes dart at the chanting faces, and I can see his chest rise and fall with heavy breaths. Hamza hits my chest, startling me, then points. "The orphan floats like a butterfly, yeah?" I nod without looking at him. The dust hovers around the two fighters, and the tension in my stomach pushes my insides into my throat. Even when my brothers fought, my body acted as if I were fighting instead of them. Saliva fills my mouth, and I spit it at my feet. Dancing again, I can see that look in Rosmik's eyes, like a dog sick with madness and only one mission. The same look my dog Shalo had before a gendarme shot him after he was bitten by a local street dog. Rosmik lunges at Mikron, wrapping his arms around his waist and driving him into the dirt. I can't see much in the dusty fog except the shadow of bodies rolling around. Even Nishan the politician starts chanting along with the others. Then I hear the unmistakable crack of knuckle on bone. "Is it Rosmik or Mikron?" Nishan asks. I try to say something, but I fight back the urge to throw up. As the dust clears, Rosmik's hunched body and bloodied fist land in Mikron's face. With his hands up, he tries to signal his surrender, but the wild eyes of Rosmik see nothing. He lifts his red fist more slowly, as if he's lifting a hammer to drive home a nail. But before he can drop it, a blur flies from my right, and Hamza's lanky figure dives into Rosmik's thick body, knocking them both to the ground. The frenzy grows louder, and the other boys rush in to break up the scuffle. Mikron rolls to his side, and the blood from his nose mixes with the dust. "Get off of me! Let me go!" Rosmik screams with so much fury that his voice cracks, as the boys who jumped in begin to spread out as he Hamza crawl atop Rosmik, pinning him to the ground. "You won, Ros. You joined his nose and his mouth. Everyone knows it. Just relax," Hamza says impatiently. "Don't touch me, Turk. This has nothing to do with you," Rosmik growls. The other boys help Hamza hold Rosmik down until his legs stop kicking and the wildness leaves his eyes. His long breaths heave in and out, and, watching him breathe, the metallic taste on my tongue begins to fade. I look back to Mikron. During the commotion, he sits upright, with his elbows on his knees and his head hanging. Coated in dust, he touches the dark bruises forming under his eyes and wipes the blood from the gash in his lip. Other boys chatter about the fight and how the Turk wrestled Rosmik into submission, but not because they admire Hamza. From my left, Nishan strolls in front of me, making sure he crosses my path. He holds his hands behind his back, pacing as if lost in thought. Before he says, "My Baba always says, dogs that fight each other will join against the wolf." "What does that mean?" I ask. Nishan pauses, pushes his glasses onto the bridge of his nose, then shrugs. "I don't know. It just seemed like the right thing to say." I hear some grunts, and Hamza is on his feet now, dusting off his trousers and vest, while Rosmik scrambles to his feet, spits, and stomps off. Some boys follow him while the others begin to leave for home. Mikron still sits with his head down, facing the dirt. Hamza walks over, swiping dust from his shirt and trousers. Mikron refuses to look up, and I see a tear trickle down his cheek, leaving a trail through the muddy caked blood. Nishan and I approach the two. Nishan clears his throat before speaking. "Rosmik always settles arguments with his fists, something his father sadly teaches him." Blood drips from Mikron's nose, and he wipes at it with the back of his hand. He raises his eyes to the three of us. He squints through his swollen right eye at our faces, then sees Hamza. "I didn't need your help. I had him," Mikron mumbles. Hamza looks at Nishan and me before answering. "You don't know Rosmik like we do." Mikron looks at us, and I see something in his face that I haven't seen before, even in Roz. Something he can't quite understand. "Why do you allow him here? Shouldn't he be with his kind beyond the cemetery?" Mikron asks in our language, keeping his eyes on us and nodding his head toward Hamza. We share the same look with the same empty mouths. The rumors I heard at home from Baba and Uncle Tarzi flood back to me. Whether they are true or not, Hamza is different. I glance at my friend, and he stares back, dusting off his arms and legs. For the moment, I'm glad he doesn't understand my language well. Nishan answers, holding out his palms in an almost pleading way. "Look, he even helped you when Rosmik lost his mind. Turk or not, he is a good friend." Struggling to his feet, Mikron stands and glares at us through his swollen eye. He rubs the blood from under his nose. His eyes move away from Hamza and focus on us. "Tell the Turk to stay away from me," he grumbles. He turns away, pushing through two boys still talking about the fight. Nishan and I watch him leave as Hamza stands next to me. He asked me, "What did he say, Surin?" I paused, unsure if I should tell him the truth or create a lie. "It's not important," I replied, though his words still linger with me like a bitter taste from a bad fruit. Ishan shakes his head, making tis-tis noises with his lips before remarking with a sigh, "Armenians." "Hey, what are you boys doing?" a deep voice shouts towards us. Our heads snap at the sound and see Fat Father Zakarian standing on the steps at the back of the church. His white, wiry beard is bright in the sunlight. His eyes lock on mine and he points a finger at me. "I see you, Surin. Don't make me tell your father what you've been up to." Like a flock of startled birds, we scatter.
Nice.
All right. So yeah.
Where'd you get the characters? And some of them you're interspersing some historical figures, but you obviously they're coming from you. And what were your inspiration for writing your characters and developing them?
It was a little challenging because I'm trying to think like a 14-year-old boy again, and I'm very much not that anymore. That was a while ago. So I think for the characters, I definitely wanted, especially because you get to meet pretty much. There's a few more of characters that are part of the friend group that will come in later. And so I wanted them to each kind of have their own distinctive personalities. So, I wanted, certain characters to be more comedic, maybe a little more fearless, kind of bruisers like Rosmik, and so it was kind of a balancing act of trying to figure out each of those characters and just giving us enough of kind of their backstory and their personality so that they kind of add to the chemistry of the group. With Surin, I wanted to develop a character that was kind of, a little pensive, and a little more thoughtful. As he's narrating the story, you can kind of get a sense of who he is and how he sees the world. I mean, he's not like a bright, poetic student or speaker, but he's somebody that is very observant. And so I kind of wanted to have a character like that who's kind of has these ideals, but also wants to do the right thing, but is also, probably really scared. But he's not necessarily willing to admit that. Obviously, you can tell he doesn't really like. He's watching the fight, but he's not really feeling great about it. So, but his struggle is also like, I have to be a fighter. I have to go, to fight with the soldiers and defend my homeland and stuff. So, I guess I was just trying to figure out how to, give enough of these characters depth. And so I may have had like a list I wrote and kind of wrote little characteristic traits just to kind of give them an idea, just because there's a lot of them. You got the friend group, you've got his family too, which comes in the next chapter, and that dynamic of the family and the individual characters in that. So each character, I don't know, sometimes they just kind of form as you like, oh, I want to include this type of character, so you just start writing them, and then all of a sudden, whether that's some subconscious thing with people I've actually met or characters I've seen on TV, it's a lot of it is a little. Robert Olin Butler had written a book called From Where We Dream, and he kind of talks about like how the subconscious influences our writing. And Cormac McCarthy is in that too. So, and those are two authors I admire. So maybe that's where it came from. Maybe they're onto something. But yeah, and even Aram Manukyan, who comes up in this, I mean, I didn't know anything about his personality. I had to kind of make that up. But he was a professor, so he was an educator. So and at the time, Vaughan was actually a city of, it was almost like a intellectual renaissance happening prior to the genocide.
Oh wow!
Yeah, there was a lot of philosophers, a lot of there was very high education and a lot of theater. There was a lot of like classical music and stuff like that. And so it was a very vibrant place until.
They didn't make love not war, huh?
No.
Can't get that in their philosophy.
Yeah, they didn't get that one. Well, yeah. So to start us off, anybody's got any questions?
Any questions? Thank you.
Geographically, does it still have presence in the Armenians, or do we have a homeland? Or
Well, there's Armenia, country of Armenia.
yeah, but the ones that were displaced and just
Well, a lot of the ones were displaced. Yeah, their home was in modern day Turkey now.
yeah, so
So yeah, I mean, from what I've read and things like that, I've seen, there's a lot of like Armenian Americans that are more the, grandchildren of the ones that
Descendants.
fled. Yeah, a lot of them are kind of making pilgrimages back to where their family came from. So,
What would you say was the largest diaspora right now? Was it
Glendale, Pasadena area.
let's figure all that stuff in that record. I heard. There's a
And-
market in Hollister, Goleta,
Mm-hmm.
the international market.
International one,
And
yeah.
I don't know if they're fully Armenian, but they have a lot of Armenian products there.
Influence, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's little pockets all over. Watertown, Massachusetts is where the Armenian Genocide Museum, I think. There's also another kind of like Armenian American museum down in Glendale, but Watertown, Massachusetts has a huge population of Armenians as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
New England area.
Okay.
But there's also a lot of Armenians in Russia, Iran, Syria, Lebanon.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think there's a lot in France too. So, yeah, during the time, actually, the United States was pretty integral in helping Armenians get out of Turkey or the Ottoman Empire at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the first lady at the time. I think it was a Roosevelt, Eleanor Roosevelt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, created the Friends of Armenia and helped raise money so that they could get Armenians
Mm-hmm.
refugees and get them placed and bring them to America, basically. So, yeah. So there's also what was the other thing I was gonna say? Slipped my mind. Anyway, there is a book though. There's a book called Under the Light of the Moon, which is from Laura Michael Gavujian, who she blurbed my book and was actually somebody I had a conversation with when I was trying to, get Armenian input on the book. She has a book that's it's a kid's book, like middle grade, but it's about Jackie Coogan, the old actor who was Uncle Lester in the Addams Family. And I think when he was a kid, and it's kind of about him as a kid seeing the Armenians and wanting to help them. And so it's kind of, I haven't read it, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Interesting.
But it's based off of an actual figure. Oh, I was going to say, because I'm a Warriors fan, that Steve Kerr, coach of the Golden State Warriors, his grandparents were huge figures in helping like the Near East Relief and the Friends of Armenia to bring Armenians over to the United States. And his family they were actually honored in like a ceremony up in, it might have, somewhere. It was either in Glendale or in the Bay Area. And so Steve Kerr's family is actually they have Armenian Heritage Night. for the
They do,
Warriors.
yes.
Yeah. So
I think they're the only sports team that does too.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah. So I had to plug that because I'm a Warriors fan. So
Okay.
gotta put that one out there.
If I can ask one more question about, authors are either plotters or pantsers, meaning they plot A to B all the way to the end of their novel, or they fly by the seat of their pants. That's why they call them pantsers. Writing this, you had some structure ahead of you in terms of defending, the city, the war, the genocide, but were you able to plot this, or did you kind of just let the story flow?
I had to plot this one because it was based on a historical event. So, and actually the sections, it's broken up into sections, and I actually have that as dates. So April 17th, 1915, April 19th, 1915. So that was nice because I actually had a structure. I had a timeline,
Mm-hmm.
a series of events of when things happened. It's not 100% historically accurate, but I was able. That kind of helped me focus on the characters more because I didn't have to worry about like, okay, what should happen next, you know? Because I knew that on this date, you know, there was this, you know, like battle where there was a gate that they fought over and blah blah blah, you know. And I know that it ends at this time, and so I was able to use that as kind of an outline, and then it was more of like filling in what happens in Soren's life during those times.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty helpful. Other books I've written has felt a little more kind of free form, not so much like which is funny because I'm a list person in my life. Like I'm always like, oh, I have to write a list. I can't do anything unless I write a list and write it all down. But sometimes, you know, certain novels, I kind of have a loose idea of what's happening, and then I'll kind of fit it within that, change it if I need to, but kind of follow that. Short stories, not so much. Short stories, I'm pretty like, let's just see where this goes. Yeah, because it's a short story, so I have a little freedom to do that.
This was a different experience for you writing this book as
Yeah.
opposed to your previous.
I've never really written historical fiction, and this was my first kind of foray into it. It turns out I really like it. It was actually kind of fun. So I'll probably dive into that a little bit more and try to have a couple other ideas of other historical fiction books I might dive into when my life settles down.
All right. Does anybody have any more questions? So, N.T McQueen, thank you very much for sharing Never Hide from the Devil with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.